There's a video I did on my live channel about almost a year ago that is very, very apt for what's been going on in the news recently. This is a channel that I used to use for live streams that is now mostly an abandoned channel for koi fish, which I'm going to go back to streaming koi fish on shortly. It's becoming the villain is easier than you think. About 4.5 years ago, I was using a horrible combination of software, vBulletin and PayPal. If you use these pieces of software, people will not be billed what they should be billed, when they should be billed. You'll be lucky if you have a working system at all. It was horrible. And there's one day that Kevin walked into the office and said, somebody called and said they got double billed. What should I do? And I look it up and I say, oh yeah, they were double billed, refund them. And I figured, maybe they're like me. They have spectrum internet, or they're just impulsive and impatient. And when something doesn't work, they do this, whatever. Things happen. A few weeks later, I get another thing from Kevin saying, oh yeah, somebody got double billed. I'm going to go refund them. And I said, sure. And then after that happened, I said, look, what are the chances of that in 1 month? Let me look into this. So I look into it and I realized that there are a substantial number of people that had not called us yet that had actually been paying twice the fee every single month for a forum that I have where you can get your motherboard repair questions answered by one of my mentors who's way smarter than me. And this is a problem because these people were all getting double billed, and I imagine at some point they would recognize it. Now, there are 3 things you could do as a business owner at this point in time. Behind door number 1, you could just not look into it. You could say, anytime somebody calls in with this issue, refund them. I don't know that my system's double billing people. Maybe I don't know why, but you chose to not know why because you weren't looking into it. Behind door number 2, you could do some underhanded shit like this. You could look into the issue. You could see that there's an issue, but then you could say, anytime somebody contacts you and says that there's an issue, you don't just refund them what they paid. You refund them several months after. So instead of just refunding them that $29 once, give them maybe give them $87 back or something like that. Give them back something where they'll go, wow, you mean you only made a mistake with $29 and you're giving me back $87? Not only are you going to get an amazing 5-star review from that person because they're like, wow, not only did they admit their mistake, they gave me additional money on top, but you're also going to continue collecting money from those 10 or 20 or 40 people that have no idea they're getting double billed, that may not notice it until it's far too late to file a chargeback. Or behind door number 3, you can go, let me inspect what I would expect, great saying that my stepmom has, and fix the problem. That's what I did. In mid-2020, I said, screw this. I took my form and everything offline. We're going to wait until this is fixed. And I put it together with Stripe and Zenforo, which is a working setup, unlike the garbage you get with vBulletin, where, again, vBulletin plus PayPal, that is what nightmares are made of. The sad part here is that doing the wrong thing would actually result in more 5-star reviews. The people who don't realize they're getting double billed, they're probably not going to realize they're getting double billed. So I get more money. The people who are contacting me about the double billing, which are a very small percentage of the overall people, if they got double billed in a $29 transaction and I give them back $50 or $60 or $80, they're actually going to leave 5-star reviews saying, Lewis is such a good guy. He only should have refunded me $30. They responded instantly and gave me $70 back just because of their mistake. You can actually be a piece of shit and get a better reputation for it. Or you could just, even if you didn't look into your back-end database to see that was happening, you could just not look and say, and you'd be able to say, I didn't know that was happening, and you would be honest. But the problem would be is not did you know, it's what steps did you take to try and figure out what was going on? Because a lot of time they'll say something like, well, did you know that this bad thing was happening? But it's really more of a question of were you willfully ignorant? Another example here with iPhone screens. Back in the day when the iPhone 4 became popular, this required disassembling everything rather than just taking the screen off of the phone. It was a big pain in the ass compared to some of the older models, lots of screws and everything else. And the original iPhone screen would have this little piece of foam that went between a metal plate that you clipped into it, not clipped in, that you screwed into it, and the screen connectors. And if those little pieces of foam were not there, there would be a little bit of air gap between the connectors and the metal plate. And since these cables were going like this all the way around, what do you think is going to happen if it drops? So you have a cable that's a flex cable that's bent all the way around like this, and there's a nice little air gap between the metal panel above it and this. What's going to happen is it's going to come off. Now, this is something that's only going to happen if you have dropped the phone. It's not going to happen under normal circumstances. So if this happens to a customer, they drop their phone, they know they dropped it, so there's going to be some sense of guilt, like, I did this, I'm not going to blame the repair place for it. They show up expecting to have to pay again. Now, if I open their device and I just pop it back in and I say, hey, it looks like you damaged it when you dropped it, but you know what? You're such a good customer, I just fixed it again for free. You know what's going to happen in that instance? They're going to leave a $10 tip, a $20 tip, maybe even a $50 tip if they're a really nice person. Or at the very least, they're going to recommend us to other people. We're going to have a good reputation because they expected to get screwed. They showed up after they knew they did something wrong, and we made it right. Or what I could do is I could put that little pad on there at the end of each repair. Putting the pad on at the end of each repair takes more time. It costs me money. And above all, by doing so, I may actually end up with less 5-star reviews and less money in the tip jar than if I just pretended it wasn't a problem at all. Now, there are two ways you could go about this. You could either figure out that that's the problem and choose to not fix it because why bother? You could figure it out and then actually fix it for the customer properly each time, which there's really no reward for. Or you could just feign ignorance. It seems like everybody is continuously coming back in, needing this little thing pop back in. Should I try and measure to see how much space is available between that plug and that metal plate? Or just... Because if you don't measure it, then when they say, were you doing anything wrong? When you say, no, I wasn't, you're not lying because you never looked into it. The reality is that it is very easy to become a villain. And becoming a villain doesn't start with kicking somebody while they're down. It simply starts by not giving a fuck if the system that you have in place is screwing people and not inspecting it. If you don't see it, well, I guess it's not there. And if I didn't know it was there, then I can't be held accountable for it, right? You probably see where I'm going with this. So in the news recently, we've heard a lot about an AI system for United Healthcare that resulted in 90% of patient claims being denied via an AI that were not supposed to be getting denied. And admittedly, the more I try to dig into this, the only place I can find the number 90 mentioned is in one class action suit, and the only place I can find for the 90% claim was this one, which is upon information and belief, which is kind of like the class action lawsuit version of someone familiar with the matter. However, if you look into everything else, and if you just kind of dig a little bit, you'll see that successful appeals, usually about 70% of the time, when you appeal, you win. Not 90, but 70, which is still like, it's one of those things where it's the actually person fact checking you when you say, it's got to be like 100 degrees here. Actually, it's 98. Shut the fuck up. If you look over here, you'll see that their rate of denials has gone from 10% in 2020 to 16% in 2021 to 22% in 2022. And when it comes to the amount of people that file appeals, even though 70% of them are successful, if you take a look over here at this study by KFF that uses a bunch of, I think, Medicare data, I'll leave it in the description below so you can see. I decided to just kind of sort it out. So then when you sort it and you average at the end, 0.9% rate of people on medical issuers filing appeals, 0.9%. So 70% of the people that file those appeals win, but only 0.9% of them on average appear to be actually filing an appeal. Seems like a pretty convenient system. Now, it would be easy for somebody to say, well, I didn't know that AI was doing something wrong. I didn't know that this was the result. I didn't know. It doesn't matter. Because the thing is, the way that you become evil is not by saying, I saw this horrible thing happen and I'm going to continue allowing it. That's one type of evil. If I actually looked into that system and I rubbed my hands together like this and said, I'm going to take every one of their money and I'm going to refund the people that complain a little bit more so that I have a good reputation and all those other people don't notice it. That's true evil. But that's not where it begins. It starts with something is happening that is benefiting me. It consistently benefits me. And am I going to look into why? Nah. When something is too good to be true, it's important to look into it. And there's too many people who are going to say stuff like, well, how is it that this particular executive at this company is going to know everything that's going on? I mean, he's just a cog in a machine. How is it that an executive at a particular firm is going to know that this system is doing this? Well, I think you would look at something like this. It seems like we made an insane amount more money this year. Let's look into why that is, or let's just ignore it. It's there on the paper, right? Like, Well, what you could do is you could say, looks like we made a bunch more money this year. Looks like we had denied like almost twice as many people in this category this year as we did last year. What's different? We implemented this new system that looks through claims and patient reports. I don't use these much anymore, but you could do. To not connect those dots is a decision that a person has to make. And simply because you refuse to make the decision to connect those dots does not mean that you're not culpable when some nasty shit happens. If I could very easily have said, I had no idea that my forum was double billing people for the past 4 years. I didn't know. But it's a choice to not know. And at what point do you hold somebody accountable or responsible for that? And to what degree? Evil is not something that pops up when somebody rubs their hands together and says, I'm going to do something to screw you. It starts off with, seems like a lot of people are complaining that our products have somehow become less repairable. I don't remember saying in the meeting that I wanted them to be less repairable. Or, seems like every time somebody has this particular problem, we're quoting them like $2,000. Wonder. And somebody complained about it. Well, you know what? I'm going to issue a stern warning. I'm not going to look into why they did that. I'm not going to look into what policy has caused them to get quoted $2,000 for a bent pin. I'm not going to look into what in our documentation could be different. I'm just going to say, you tell that person not to do that again. That's a choice. It's a choice to not look. And at some point, you hold people accountable for that. The problem with vigilante justice is that it is very difficult to figure out where the line is. The reason that we have laws in society is because we need to know exactly where the line is so that we can settle things, so that we don't have 320 million different points of view. Is it too much when the claims rate goes from 8 to 10, from 10 to 12, from 12 to 14, from 14 to 18% denial? Is it that bad of an offense if it's just broken arms? But if it's a broken arm and a broken leg, is it when it's stage 1 cancer where you get declined, or is it when it's stage 2, 3, or 4 cancer when you get declined and the person didn't know? Is it when the person who is responsible for the company had 3 years to figure it out, 2 years, 18 months? Like, at what point is it okay for somebody to do that to him in the street? The reason vigilante justice is bad is because we all have different ideas on what that should be. And if we all act on those different ideas of when that should be, that's when shit starts to fall apart. It's very similar to one of those court decisions on porn. I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it. And I think what you've seen happen across America over the past week and a half is one of those things where I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And this is one of those areas where too many people were looking away for too long, as they line their pockets too much and stop giving two shits of a fuck why things were happening the way they were, why the denials were going up, why their profits were going up at the same time that their denials were going up, why all these people were complaining about their health outcomes, why their health outcomes were going down as your profit was going up, as your denials were going up. And I think one of the ways that this has brought everybody together in the country, regardless of their political affiliations, is there's this idea that I've always kind of pushed back against, that a lot of capitalism is a zero-sum game. Some, yeah, but for the most part, there are many ways. Like there are extremists out there that will say anytime somebody has made a profit, they've done that by exploiting somebody else. And that's a little bit extreme. And then there are the people that say, well, if you don't like it, why don't you just start your own healthcare company? But when it comes to health insurance, I think one of the things that's really united so many people is that it really is one of those very small areas in the capitalistic system where it's very easy to make the argument that it's a zero-sum game. When I make a profit, back in the early days, back in 2008 and 2009, it was because I had went to a recycling facility, or I had went to a literal dumpster, and I took something that was broken, that society had discarded, and then I took other items from this dumpster that people had discarded, and I combined them to make something that worked. And then I went up to somebody who couldn't afford to buy something new, and I said, would you like this? It comes with a warranty for several years, and it costs less than a quarter of what you're going to get at the Apple Store. And they said, absolutely. That is providing value to society. In exchange for providing value to society, I received money. No part of this was exploitative. I did something good for the world did something good for me. Here, when you are making more money as an insurance company, it's a result of you not providing the service that you were supposed to provide for your customers. I make more money when I do more repairs. When more people get their data back, I have made more money. When more stuff that is in a landfill now works again, that has been sold to an e-waste company that I buy and then I resell or whatever. Like, that is a way where if I make more money, I have done more good. It's like a nice little linear plot there. In insurance, you're making more money by taking people's money for service that you're telling them they're going to get later and then not providing it to them. It's one of those ways where when your profit goes up, there's almost a direct correlation between your profits going up and your customers getting screwed. It's not that HEB has more customers because there's more people moving to an area so they have more food to sell. It's not that like the guy that mows grass did such a good job that more people who would otherwise not cut their grass want him to cut their grass. It's just you fucking people. And at what point have you fucked people so much that they just don't care when something bad happens to you anymore? What I said in the last video is that at the end of it, this is going to happen way more often if people don't just step back and say, you know what, I'm tired of fucking people. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to cross this particular line. That this channel has become a meme where I just show up here every other day and go, welcome to today's episode of How You're Getting Effed. I'm your host, Louis Rossman. What is it that you can do? Inspect what you expect. When something happens and you have the choice to look away or go, dig into it a little bit. You may find something that you don't like. It may be like moving a piece of furniture in your garage that you've kind of avoided moving. And once you move it, you see that there's like 100 little baby cockroaches under it or something. It doesn't go away because you avoid it. It's still there, and it's going to come back to bite you in the ass later. It might bite a lot of other people in the ass before it bites you in the ass. But at some point, what goes around comes around. One of the first steps to this, when it comes to not being a piece of crap to other people, because somebody asked about that in the last video, what does that mean? It starts with making the choice to look and ask questions. Poke a little bit. Poke even when that poking means, you know what? I'm actually going to put in some work here, and I'm going to get less reviews, and I may have to actually lose out on a little bit of money. But in the long term, you're doing the right thing. I do believe that it comes back to you. I believe that every single one of those little foam pieces that I put on an iPhone 4 fucking screen cable came back to me at some point. I hope it did. One way to find out. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.